First off, before anyone gets smart and cute in the comments, I'm not talking about circumstances where people are in so much physical pain that they'd rather be dead, like Dr. Kevorkian's clients. Those are rare and extreme circumstances where suicide may be considered reasonable and selfish. I personally would not know, and quite frankly, I don't care to imagine. Nonetheless, last week, in response to Anthony Bourdain's suicide, I saw people running their mouths on social media talking about how suicide is so selfish. Well-known people like actor Val Kilmer and radio show host Tom Leykis notably pushed the idea that Bourdain was selfish. For Anthony Bourdain killed himself with little or no concern for how his family and friends would feel. So let's begin by addressing the common myth that selfishness is bad. Quite the contrary. Selfishness is a virtue. A person who is rationally egoistic that seeks happiness and earns self-esteem certainly does not have a reason to suddenly end their life, especially if they have prioritized their life and happiness to begin with. It's kind of like that Louis C.K. joke about divorce, about how no good marriage comes to an end.
That would be sad. If two people were married and they were really happy and they just had a great thing, and then they got divorced, that would be really sad. But that has happened 0 times.
No happily married couple gets together one day and says, "Hey, we have a great thing going. Let's end everything and start seeing other people." No, divorce happens because one or both parties in a marriage are unhappy and want out. Likewise, it does not make sense for a happy individual with high self-esteem to suddenly end their life. A truly selfish person would do whatever it takes to stay alive.
I have no self-esteem.
Yes, Matt Walsh, please give us your solution to the suicide epidemic after condescendingly dismissing the concept of self-esteem as a meaningless fantasy. And I'm not sure if Tom Leykis means to demonize selfishness when he criticizes Anthony Bourdain for committing suicide, but if so, I find it interesting given that Leykis promotes a selfish lifestyle to his listeners. Leykis' final segment for 97.1 had a profound impact on me and how I think about life.
There's an overarching theme to everything I have taught in this classroom. And what that overarching theme is this. The key to getting chicks, the key to getting laid, the key to appearing successful, the key to being successful, it all begins with something that I had to learn myself. Love yourself. Love yourself first. I'm not talking about masturbation, you elementary morons out there. I'm talking to you about the way you feel about yourself defines everything you are and everything you ever can be.
That's right, folks. Love yourself first and be selfish by wrapping a short rope around your neck and jumping. What's the implication from people like Val Kilmer and Tom Leykis when they immediately criticize Anthony Bourdain for being selfish, given that he killed himself with zero concern for his family and fans? The implication is that Anthony Bourdain, who is now dead, is not the real victim here, but rather Bourdain's loved ones and fans who are still alive are the real victims.
That's ridiculous!
But on top of that, their implication is that it would be more noble and virtuous of Anthony Bourdain to stay alive simply for the sake of others rather than Bourdain's own sake. Right here we see a contradiction. Because if Anthony Bourdain simply chose to prioritize his life and happiness and not kill himself, well, that would be selfish, which is assumed to be a sin. Meaning that it would be selfish for Anthony Bourdain to kill himself without concern for his family and fans, but it would also be selfish for Anthony Bourdain to stay alive for his own sake. In other words, the only way Anthony Bourdain should live his life is for the sake of others. No wonder why people like Anthony Bourdain kill themselves. Nobody gives them a good reason to live. All this talk about reaching out and people tweeting assistance hotlines. Anyone who thinks that selfishness is bad and that suicide is an act of selfishness, I have a question. What in the blue hell would you say to someone if you reached out to them? They're miserable, their brain is a total mess, they're giving up on life. Well, you can't tell them to prioritize their own life, set goals, and make a focused effort to earn self-esteem because, after all, that would be selfish, and selfishness is bad. Whatever you do, don't tell someone who is suicidal to start prioritizing their happiness. Can't have that going on. I guess you could do what the guardian angel from It's a Wonderful Life did by encouraging people to continue living for the sake of others. While you're at it, start telling people to go to work for free and stop demanding paychecks from their employer because serving others is so noble. Don't bother making an effort to be happy. That would be selfish. Rather, dedicate your life to making others happy because that's why people should live, to make sure others are doing okay. If altruism and self-sacrifice are considered ideals to live by, then the only logical conclusions are slavery or suicide. Someone either chooses to live for the sake of others, thereby constantly sacrificing values to other people, which is self-imposed slavery, or they decide that others are not worth sacrificing for and conclude that life is no longer worth living because being selfish is out of the question. Or perhaps suicide victims conclude that the world would be better off without them being alive, and that their family and friends would be happier without them. Suicide prevention services and experts actually warn people to look out for statements like this as a sign of someone who is potentially suicidal. See, it's the stupid ideal of altruism that makes people want to grab a rope. If endless concern for others and sacrifice are considered noble, then how could someone ever possibly be happy? Anyone who practices this morality consistently will never be happy because their first concern will be the happiness and well-being of others. And even if they achieve happiness, they'll feel guilty over it because they had to be selfish to a certain extent to earn that happiness to begin with. And they did not concern themselves enough with the well-being of those who are not happy. As Nathaniel Branden states in an essay titled Mental Health versus Mysticism and Self-Sacrifice, which can be found in The Virtue of Selfishness, quote, "Anxiety and guilt, the antipodes of self-esteem and the insignia of mental illness, are the disintegrators of thought, the distorters of values, and the paralyzers of action." Branden goes on to say, quote, "Neither mysticism nor the creed of self-sacrifice is compatible with mental health or self-esteem. These doctrines are destructive existentially and psychologically." Unquote. And this does not even mention the role of religion and other forms of mysticism. As Branden goes on to state, quote, "Man's need of self-esteem entails the need for a sense of control over reality. But no control is possible in a universe which, by one's own concession, contains the supernatural, the miraculous, and the causeless. A universe in which one is at the mercy of ghosts and demons, in which one must deal not with the unknown, but with the unknowable. No control is possible if man proposes, but a ghost disposes. No control is possible if the universe is a haunted house."
You're goddamn right.
Bottom line, suicide is the least selfish thing anyone could do. The idea that suicide is an act of selfishness is stupid, to say the least. If you want to prevent suicides, start encouraging people to be selfish. Otherwise,
know your role and shut your mouth!